comes up.
Yeah, we're going to need a few minutes to set up the Zoom meeting.
Oh. While they're setting up the Zoom, I just want to congratulate all of you who are winners in our silent auction. Hooray! And invite you to come find me at any time to pick up your item. And then Karen Ellis in the back, can you wave, Karen? Karen can take your payment by credit card or check, probably cash. I imagine it's always available. Bitcoin. Not sure about Bitcoin. So just in case you don't know who you are, Mary Jo, you're the wonderful winner of this beautiful batik. Congratulations. Kip Hargrave, congratulations. The beautiful orange, that was my favorite. Good job. Judy, you've won the beautiful handmade candle holders. Judy. Yay! And Terry is the winner of the novel by Lynn. Terry, are you here? Terry, yay! Congratulations. And Mike Noonan is the winner of the Japanese teacups. He's left already, so we'll have to arrange that. Coming to him. And then Michelle is the winner of the salad servers, hooray, and the salt and pepper shakers. Congratulations. And Beth is a big winner of 3. Items that we've already spoken about. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Can we take a few minutes just to set up the Zoom meeting?
Sure. We're trying to get some of the board members on live here so they can introduce themselves as
Great. I'm sorry, that was a late Zoom link from me to them, but I think they're waiting, so that's okay.
Hey, Mike, I'm driving to Boston. If anybody wants to ride to Boston.
Father Legal's driving to Boston if anybody needs a ride to Boston.
Right. Take care. For assembly meetings a week.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm not even sure that we're going to have any board members join us, but Chris got some good practice here setting it all up. So you guys all know about us. I probably don't need to read this to everybody, but Maryknoll Lay Missioners is a Catholic mission sending community committed to nonviolence through prevention, intervention, reconciliation, and restoration of all creation. We are long-term missioners and missioner families in 9 African, Asian, and American countries, striving to create an inclusive and anti-racist world. We live with those most excluded in society to transform unjust structures together. And the missioners came up with at the MAC a new mission statement. And the new mission statement is, it's been a little bit of a challenge for us to articulate it to the outside world. So as we talk about some of our goals, you'll see that's one of our goals, to work on that. And this is our board of directors. You all have met Marie, and Heidi and Dee are the 2 missioner representatives on the board. And I don't know how many of you know them, but Heidi's on the border, and Dee right now is in Beirut. Vicki Simon is an ex-missioner, and she's from St. Louis. Colleen Kennedy works at Catholic Charities. She's their advancement director. And Christine Wallentek, she is a new board member, and so I'm going to have to look in. She's from St. Louis, isn't she, Alberta? Christine? Yes. Then we have Kelly Gibbons, Catherine Heinhold, and Michelle Heisner. Catherine is also a returned missioner. And Kimberly, Kim, we call her Kim Mazek, and Michael Meehan. Michael's a new board member. He's from St. Louis as well. And Debbie Cummingham and myself. You'll notice the two male members of the board are named Mike, so that's one of the requirements. So we're in the process of working on our strategic plan for the future. Oh, okay. So, all right, we'll let them tell you a little bit about themselves. And I should probably turn the mic off, right, Chris?
No.
Okay.
So for the people who are joining us.
They can see them.
Eddie and Catherine, can you hear us now?
Good morning, Heidi and Kathy. Can you hear us?
Oh, testing, testing.
Yes, I can hear you and Chris. Thanks.
Okay, great.
Sounds like I.
Okay. Yeah. Mhm. No, we're sharing. That's fine.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
can we show Heidi or?
Oh.
Okay, Heidi, you want to go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself? And you're under.
I confess I came completely unprepared. But good morning, everyone. I'm Heidi Cernecka, and I am currently a lay missioner, have been since 1996. I have been in Brazil for almost 18 years, and then I was in Kenya for a year, and I'm currently at the US-Mexico border doing immigration law. I'm also on the board of directors and have been for like 7 years. And I don't know what else to tell you except that I was at the 2022 assembly when we made a decision to make nonviolence our priority. And to me, it makes sense in today's world. And I don't know how we could do anything but be about being actively nonviolent in our way of being, in our everyday actions as our ministries, and in our orientation to the world. And I'm so glad that you all are together, and it's lovely to see you in the video. Thanks.
Thank you, Heidi. Is Catherine? Is Catherine on?
She was on earlier.
She is connected, but her video's off.
Catherine, can you hear us? Oh, there she is.
Were you talking to me? Yeah, it's kind of hard to hear, and I just logged on with since yeah, I just got the link a minute ago. But good morning. We're introducing ourselves. Is that what we're doing? Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
Hi, I'm Catherine Heinhold. I was in mission in Brazil from beginning of 2011 to the end of 2015. I worked in parish ministry, in prison ministry, restorative justice ministry, and with young adults with the Jesuits in Sao Paulo, and had a wonderful experience there in Brazil. And then I returned home at the end of 2015, and since the middle of 2016 have been working at Holy Trinity Parish in Washington, D.C., where I focus on Ignatian spirituality programs, picking up sort of a little bit where I left off when I left. I had been working in campus ministry at Georgetown before then. So, and I joined the board. This is my third full year on the board, and I'll be doing another 3-year term starting in January. And yeah, I've been really enjoying it. Glad to be here with you all.
Great.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, back to the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Okay, I think we have everything balanced perfectly now. So the first area that a focus for the strategic, well, it's not a strategic plan yet, it has approved, but this is what we're working on, is the ministry direction of MKLM for the next 5 years will be selected and framed through the lens of nonviolence. So that's pretty much the same thing it says up there. And we have 4 desired outcomes for this. 1, the process of developing the nonviolence focus for the board, staff, and missioners will be clarified through concrete training. 2, the social analysis of ministries within regions is built upon to determine new ministries and identify desired results. 3, connections are established with other organizations that promote active nonviolence in a changing world. And 4, the commitment to nonviolence is articulated in such a way that it is understandable for recruitment and advancement purposes. So the board is committed to nonviolence as well. We're trying to figure out how to promote nonviolence in a way that makes sense to people that have not been exposed to the concepts yet. Okay, our second area is that we want to have the financial capacity to grow and sustain effective missions. And as you're well aware, that's been a challenge for us since day one, and still is a challenge, and probably will be a challenge forever, as in most organizations. But it's certainly not something that's unsurmountable. We have 3 things we're going to look at there. 1, we want to make sure the structures are in place for sound financial management. And even though we have that as a goal, I think we're pretty comfortable with the way money's being spent and managed, and we just want to continue the good practices there. The next is the more challenging structures are in place for sustainable increases in revenue, which means we need to figure out how to raise more money. And and the third is in NKLM's efforts to grow the impact of the organization, revenues and expenses are in pace with each other. And as I mentioned at the opening, I don't know how many of you were here at the opening. We have our budget for 2026 that's been approved, and for the third year in a row, we will not be drawing more than 5% from the foundation, which, as foundations are set up, that's seen as a sustainable withdrawal rate. The fund will continue to grow at a rate to maintain that. So we are making progress there. Our goal number 3 is systems are in place to increase MKLM's impact throughout the world in line with its vision and values. First desired outcome is that more Maryknoll Lay Missioners are recruited. And as you heard, we have 11 starting this year. And that's quite a jump from what we've seen in the past few years. And we're hoping that it's a trend, not an anomaly. I'd like to compliment Elvira. I think she's assembled a great staff. So, I think a lot of these things are going to be easier because she has the right people in place. Outcome B, missioners are adequately supported, leading to more missioners staying for their full first contract and beyond. One of the things that we're kind of going back and forth about is whether or not we need to reinstate the director of mission position. And right now, we're hopeful that with the 2 area directors, that we will need to do that from a financial standpoint. But it's, the jury's still out. And then the third is to develop benchmarks to measure MKLM's desired impact. And as I've discussed with some of you, it's kind of hard how do you measure nonviolence? So that's going to be a challenge for us. And our fourth area of focus is that Maryknoll Lay Missioners has the leadership and governance in place to fully support effective mission in the 21st century. And the 3 outcomes we're looking for is that the board and staff are properly organized for maximum responsiveness and aligned on priorities. Outcome 2, mission programs will receive increased focus. One of the things we're going to do on the board is we're going to institute a mission committee, because mission is what we do, so that should be something that the board should be more focused on. And the third is that the board, MAC, and staff will have adequate data to drive decision making. And as we discussed the other night, maybe we need to poll some of the people we help before we move forward with some of this stuff. So that's our 4 focus areas. Some of the things we're looking at for the future: and international membership, which we are trying. We've got 3 El Salvadorans that we have sent to Bolivia, and we're going to see how that works out. There's a number of logistical challenges involved. It's easier, or it's not as easy as you think. From simple things as how do you pay them? You can't pay them directly out of the room. So we have to hire an organization that we send money to, and they pay. How do you do the orientation and training? One of the, I guess it was yesterday that or was it 2 days ago, that we had a presentation from Cambodia, and they said, maybe you can recruit some missioners from Cambodia, but we are a mission sending organization, so we don't think that we want to recruit missioners that are going to work in their own country. We want to be able to send them somewhere else, and so it's going to be hard to find somebody from El Salvador that wants to go to Cambodia or vice versa. But it's not impossible, but it's a lot more challenging. The easy thing about sending the El Salvadorians to Bolivia is they already spoke the language. But it is something that we're working on. Now we're looking at shorter term contracts, and that's always been a big area of discussion. We are a long-term sending organization. So, and one of the ways that would make it easier to do short-term contracts is if we had ongoing projects in the various regions, people could pop in and pop out easier, but we're not very far along on this one yet. We talking, and we do have some, I think, how many non-Catholics do we have in the incoming class?
Oh, the incoming class.
Just one, and we've got two others out in the field. They must share our values. I mean, we're not backsliding on that, but we are accepting non-Catholics that share our values. And well, shorter term contracts and short term mission assignments, I guess they're kind of hand in hand. So let's see, and that's the end of the slides show. And so I'll take any questions and be forewarned that my answers don't speak for the whole board, but I'll try to.
Yeah, I have a question about affiliates doing short-term contracts. I know that in the past, I'm thinking about in the past, many affiliates did short-term assignments where, like in Bangkok and in Thailand. And is that something different than what this is? Or is it the same?
Yeah, actually, I was looking for Bob Short as an affiliate. That might be something that he will be giving a little presentation later on. We certainly are looking at how the affiliates and the lay missioners can collaborate more together, but that would be, yeah, affiliates, yeah. Other questions?
This isn't a question, but it's a shout out for something. I don't know how many of you have ever done a church date. Anybody done church dates? Yeah, great opportunity to talk to people in the United States Church, to get out there, and it does, I think, Maryknoll a lot of good. So please think about it and enjoy it. The other thing I would say to the board, if you're going to have us do church dates, you really should train us a little bit and not just let us go.
I'd like to speak to that. I did a church date about 5 years ago, and as you've seen, I'm not a very good speaker, and I was kind of thrown to the wolves, and I don't think it turned out too well. But now we have a packet that we provided people that are doing church dates to give them suggested talking points and guidelines, so it's much easier now. Dan?
So with church dates, also keep in mind it is, as they say, money isn't everything, love is the other 2%. But it's also an opportunity to invite people to consider, again, given with the information I shared, it's an opportunity to also invite the ministry to invite both to share in terms of resources, but also in themselves to come to alongside us.
Just piggybacking on the church days, there have been some wonderful audiovisual things that have come across while we've been here, and could those be available to us? Because I think I have youth I could go to in my parish, but they wouldn't want to listen to talk. They would be more interested in something like that, and even something where we could plug maybe a couple of our own pictures in, but they've just been lovely. Could we ask? This is a comment on the international membership and the comment about nobody from El Salvador would want to go to Cambodia. No, but the Quebec foreign missions, the Quebec missioners have an international membership, and they have El Salvadorans who are in Cambodia. Or they've had like from Latin America, from the Central America, Peru, France. They also have the Philippines. So there are international sending groups that we could be looking at as to how they do it. But it is, you know, Central Americans in Cambodia learning the language and stuff. So it is possible.
Thank you, Sammy.
Hi, I would just also reiterate that I think there's a lot of wonderful orders, like we saw Don Bosco and the Jesuits. There's other religious orders that have international members all over the world that we could plug people into their projects. And I know we do that already, but I would kind of see that as not every lay missioner should even start a whole new project. And I know that's not what we do, but I just encourage us to keep those relations with all these other religious groups, because I think it's a resource where we can plug people into easily without great expense.
Comment about church dates, and there is no substitute for in-person or virtual teaching and actual practicing. And I would encourage the development of that kind of a program. And there are ways of getting attention in a congregation that usually is not so eager to listen. Of adult education, and those can be taught virtually, and it's best if they're practiced ahead of time. I know Kip did a training in person with somebody in the Cincinnati diocese from an ex-Maryknoller, and I have personally witnessed the use of those techniques to great advantage.
Mervyn and I have worked with Mennonite Central Committee for a number of years, and I continue to be working with them in Washington, D.C. But in a similar model, MCC has really been shifting from sending people from the US and Canada to other countries to a more South-South exchange. So really recruiting people from, say, within different countries in Africa to be based in other countries in Africa, or to be based in Cambodia, coming from Kenya to Cambodia, and likewise in Central and South America. So really thinking about the strengthening of networking and sharing gifts throughout the global South. And so that's been a model that's really been seeing a lot of energy within MCC. So just really affirming the direction that Maryknoll Lay Missioners is going in that way, and I think that would be quite effective.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been doing at Gonzaga University, collaboration with the Lay Mission program, is I've been attending their volunteer fairs. So they advertise to the students opportunities to get involved in Jesuit volunteers or local organizations, and I've been their representative as the gray hair, talking to the students once a year, so that there may be some opportunities at Jesuit universities or other universities that have a campus that you can talk to. The other thing that we've recently got involved with is the JV Encore. We're in the Northwest, and the Jesuit Volunteer Encore group is former volunteers in Maryknoll and JVC that get together for prayer and reflection and retreats and things like that. And that's a very ripe contingent of people of different ages and students in college that might be a recruiting ground.
Just to say, JVI no longer exists. Jesuit Volunteer International, so they are receptive. I've had conversations to having us,
I did outreach for a number of years and did a million college fairs. And what was so frustrating is you'd be Maryknoll at a college fair, but Maryknoll wasn't appropriate for any college student right out of college to be doing other things. So I think some programs that gear towards kids right out of college would be really ripe. You know, something that at a college fair you could say, you could do this next year. I think that's a great.
Hello. I am from the great class of 1985. I was a Jesuit volunteer right after college, then was in the Boston College International Program, and then Maryknoll sent me my mail to the Bahamas with the wrong postage internationally, so I had to wait a year. Barbara Pavelka, I think it was your fault. However, I was the third year.
Oh, from El Salvador.
The 11, like as a young
No, the 11 we had 35 to 75, I think they said the age. Was.
But we do take kids right out of college now. We have had kids right out of college.
Yes, I know in the past we would
Sorry to
not
interrupt,
take
but
people
we can't
straight
hear
out of
you.
college, but we.
Josh Sisolak, who was our candidate last year, turned 24 in November while he was in orientation. So right now he is retired, you know, little, and then the younger people. We understand that we've got to do a different approach for those populations. So.
I saw Heidi had her hand up if we want to let her say something.
Thanks. It was just to tell you that you guys were muted, but you're back.
Can I say real quick that the provision for 2.5 years makes it somewhat palpable, I think, when you compare to 3.5, that year makes a difference. So remember, 2.5 years if you have the language skills of the country that you serve. So we do count that as well. But when it's 3.5 years, you can negotiate a little.
On the topic of church appeals, the society has a meeting here in the fall. For those who've gone out and made church appeals this year, and we go over what we've done, what mistakes we made, how we improved. It'd be nice to somebody see it come over and be a part of that meeting.
Because several of you are commenting on the church appeals, what Mike mentioned earlier about getting the right team together, we're very pleased with the work that Sonny did many years, but it's also exciting that the person after he retired, who's with us now, Stephanie, does have that adult education background. She's got connections with dioceses, and so she is located here, and I will make sure that we invite her to your gathering, because I think that some of the ideas you're putting forth here, we can share with her. How do we get pictures to all of you who are on her list, you know, so that then, or help put together more of a visual for those talks. So in other words, I'm gathering ideas, and we'll see how we can continue to improve that.
Okay, now I have my hand up. I just want to jump in real quick on that issue. I think, can I? Wait.
Yes, go ahead, Heidi.
Just to say, I think this year with the world and the state it is, I've become more and more aware of how one of the most important things we can do is get out and talk to people in our communities and in our churches and really challenge the question of the state of our world and justice and our responsibility to change that.
Has been trying.
Well, this is maybe not the best formulated, but I was in conversations a few years ago with the Catholic Volunteer Network, which is the response catalog and the different, about finding a way to help people find the community for them, because we use kind of a market model. And so everybody's brochure shows white people with brown kids. It's the same picture in every brochure. They're doing direct service to people. And it's never about the charism and what makes, say, Maryknoll different from the Franciscans or the Jesuit International Volunteers or things like that. So if we work together with some of the other organizations with the idea that we're not competing, but we want to help people find the organization that's the best match, I think that would go a long way towards helping people feel like they're being guided in the process of discernment. The second piece of that is we can also, and it's not poaching because it's not competition, but I've heard so many, there are people in my class and I've heard since then who said they went to the Jesuit volunteers and the Jesuits told them, that's for beginners. You should go look at Maryknoll because it's a longer term commitment. It's a deeper kind of vocation to mission. It's not a short-term volunteer kind of a thing. Even their international volunteers are 2 years, but they tend to be much younger, et cetera. So I think looking for ways to recruit, but communicate with people about the opportunity with Maryknoll who are already in other programs that may be more of those beginner experience programs rather than just at colleges or other places or at parishes would be one way to find people who maybe already have the experience where they're ready for that deeper commitment that Maryknoll entails.
So, every year in the magazine, we run the story with the sending. So, and this is just some things I've wondered about here. Last year, there was one new missioner turned missioner. And I can remember thinking, wow, that's really sad. Things are declining so much. And kind of wondering, like, is it financial? Or is it that people aren't applying? Because I read a story, I don't know if it was NCR or where, like a year or two ago about, fewer people going into short-term mission, things like that. But then this year you have 11, which is great, but can you address that issue? What impacts how many you're sending? Is it financial? Is it how many applicants you get?
I can't speak for the whole board, but personally, however many people want to go, we need to find a way to support them financially. So it is not, we've never turned people away because we didn't have the financial resources to send them. And I hope to keep it that way.
So that you are feeling a sense of fewer people interested. Because I mean, like our group was 18, and I know last group was how many?
I really appreciate Mike's response because actually that, would be part is that ever going to be? And I'm so glad to hear him confirm that. But I think the question you're asking, Lynn, is that there are a variety of reasons. And one of them is that all organizations that have mission sending or service oriented had a decline. Probably a lot of that impact was increased or exacerbated by COVID. And so we're starting to kind of come out of that. I think that 21, 22 are, the group we sent in 21, they were people who couldn't go in 2020 because of COVID. So that was a large group, but we recognize that was a combination of two. Then the next two was really coming out of that. The other is looking at our church, all of the issues, concerns that we've raised here amongst ourselves about what's happening with our church as well. And who are the groups that we're approaching? I think that, that as well, especially with the young people, that we've been using an outdated or maybe just it's dated methodology. But there are young people who care and would want, but we need to get in front of them. So that those strategies are starting to be put in place. I think that the other thing that might have been impacting the decline is that we are, not really telling the stories again. I think that it is cyclical. You can see and hear how many of the things that worked in the past, we need to get back to them. We need to make sure that we are communicating what this is about in terms of the story of transformation and accompaniment and all of that. Whereas if we were still just trying to bring people in, it felt like we were forcing. Well, let me put it this way. When I came in 2022, Karen said, we go to the universities and we go to events and we give out brochures because we were doing it the way everybody else was doing it, was not resulting in anything. So we're going back to how do we get in front of a group of whether they're young people or church groups that are social justice minded and tell the stories, because the story and our purpose is much more attractive than the brochures and handing them out at big conferences. That kind of change, but it had to do with COVID. It was necessary for us to become virtual, and I think we're trying to get back in front of the audiences that might bring in more.
Yeah, that's always been a question. Is it that we're a dinosaur and nobody's interested in doing this anymore? Or is it that we're just not reaching the people? I believe there has to be at least 10 people in the United States that so I think we have to figure out how to reach them.
I say this cautiously, having been out of the United States for the last 40 years, not knowing the church. But, at times when we're getting numbers coming in, as we're talking about now, I was just wondering, is there a place for MKLM? Well, I remember when I was leaving and just hearing things from parishes, so many parishes had mission groups, short-term exposure trips all over the place. Could MKLM be a trainer for parishes? Not, we're recruiting and sending directly, but could we also be an agent to train the parishes? And another service that MKM would offer, more than just individuals coming to us and we send them. Could we train parishes to send people? And I was just thinking what you were saying, Mike. If we had a program to help parishes send out people for 1-week trips to Haiti or something, those people then are exposed to Maryknoll. And the people who want to follow up, they know us. So I was just wondering if there could be another dimension somewhere.
Just thank you, Charlie. We also restarted after COVID, the Friends Across Borders, and we feel like after the first year, we were getting back on our feet with that. And now, the society has been doing it all along, I think, but we're even looking at how do we work together on that, because it is the immersion, the experience that also exposes people. It's been really fruitful, I'll say, at the border. The immersion trips of the university students, the parish groups that came to the border when there were opportunities for them to learn. You really see people committed then to some action. So I think that our FAB trips, Friends Across Borders.
All right, I'll take it for 1 second just to say Marijuana's had his hand up for a while, so I'll pass it, but hopefully it'll come back to me.
That's all thanks to relationships. So during these last couple of days, a number of thoughts have occurred to my mind that I'd like to share, but I think I would do that more on a one-on-one basis. But what's coming to my mind right now, particularly my work in Washington, D.C., with Franciscan Action Network, mainly doing what are known as Franciscan Justice Circles. And one thing that they constantly talk about, those around the circles have a Franciscan heartedness. However, all those circles increasingly are people who are non-Catholic. So they're Lutheran, Episcopalian, and also non-Christian, Muslims, Hindus. And so one other thing that I'm talking about that I wish to share is, since I'm so much in ecumenical forums and also interfaith forums, and we're talking about the future trajectory for MKLM, if we want to be, I would say, heard, first of all, before we recruit, in a very humble way that's mutually sharing before you think of recruitment, we've also got to be in those ecumenical and interfaith circles in terms of speaking about MKLM. And since I'm in those circles, I often am very contextual as to how I introduce myself. So I'm either Kenyan, or I'm Indian, or I'm Christian, or I'm Muslim, or I'm Hindu, or I'm MKLM, or I'm FAN, or I'm Congregation Action Network. And so I'm often asked these questions: what is MKLM? You know, a major part of my life was spent with Maryknoll Lay Missioners. And so I would encourage us, when we find those forums, to be able to speak boldly about who we are as Maryknoll Lay Missioners. And also, if we're moving in the direction of interfaith presence, particularly as we talk to South exchange, then we have to be able to do that. And I would hope the board of directors, with people who are coming from those contexts, are able to share that reality as to how we strategically move in ways that are respectful of each other's traditions. And so I'm also thinking in the terms of what was talked about earlier by some of our keynote speakers, that transformation is mutual. Whereas we are being transformed as much as those we are hoping to recruit or to share our lives with. And so I have some ideas of how that all enters into this perspective of nonviolence. Nonviolence communication, nonviolence presence, nonviolence living of how we share our lives with each other. So also in terms of the orientation that we do when we do it, particularly if we're moving to. So I've been a member of Christian peacemaker teams, which is now community peace teams, and we decentralized at one point because of visa challenges and also because of the element of equity in terms of where our presence is, who's in leadership, and who is doing the mission, the word mission, who is doing the sharing of values with one another, which I see is sometimes broader than mission. But we've been talking about that for the last couple of days. Thank you.
All right. I just have a couple comments that the last few have actually helped to maybe clarify my own comments. But I know that the things that were also spoken about were with respect to nonviolence, about how do we articulate this to the wider public. And then there was also a comment about what are the benchmarks for measuring impact. Now, remember when I say these things that I'm an engineer, so this is coming from an engineer. I think Dan Moore already spoke to it essentially a little bit the other day. When we talk about impact and we talk about measuring things, there are many ways to measure. Engineers measure with numbers. Numbers aren't all bad. However, faithfulness is an important way that we measure what we do in mission. And I think Dan described why and how that is. But it's to say, do we measure ourselves and say, are we being faithful to this nonviolence commitment, and what does it take from us? And we measure it in how hard it's been and how difficult it's been, and like the really impactful moments that nonviolence has played out in our lives. Now, how do we communicate that, or how do we articulate that? Well, I think that also mentioned by Elvira is storytelling is how we communicate that. We don't communicate it with statistics or something like that. We communicate it by telling the stories. Now, not only that, but not just us telling the stories. It's whoever we're working with in that, them telling the story of how that impacted them is also extremely important. And I think Maryknoll Magazine is a very good example of how that is effective. But also, if we look outside, I think I've mentioned to a few people, Father Greg Boyle, if you've not read his books, please read his books, because I think reading one of his books helps us understand how impactful the storytelling is in understanding and articulating what it's all about to people. And it's not, the statistics aren't necessarily going to do it, or those types of mentalities aren't necessarily going to do it for something like mission, and especially for something like nonviolence. But storytelling can do it on a grand scale, because I know that in working with the Schools of Forgiveness and Reconciliation teaching workshops in Bolivia, to hear people say, see them crying, or that this changed their life, to have an experience of actual forgiveness occur, and to have it change their whole perspective on their life, and have them telling that is impactful on me, and then that's impactful on others. So I would just encourage us to think along new lines of how we measure what we do and how we communicate that, because that's changing too. Or maybe it's going back to what has worked. That was also mentioned, is it's going back to what has worked and remembering, we don't have to be like a corporate entity completely to be successful. Maybe we have to remember what made us successful. So.
Mike, I think just one more, and then I do need to move us along.
You're the grand finale.
The class of 85. I love all this visioning going forward, but I know that when we were in Thailand, it really mattered who the anchors were, and then we were sending them, after I was actually gone, to Cambodia and Vietnam. And so I'm asking the board and Elvira, what's happening in those units, or in those mission places that will welcome and support and be community and share charism? Because Maryknoll, I know when I walked into Maryknoll, it wasn't my first interview of thinking about going overseas, but it was different, and it mattered. Just that welcome was everything to me. And then when I went to mission and was welcomed by 3 Maryknoll priests who didn't know what to do with me, but it really matters, that anchor, especially during those months of transition and learning language and that. So my question is what's happening in mission that makes the people that come, that we send, really feel welcomed and supported in that?
Excellent question. And it is something that we are looking more closely at, because, he mentioned earlier, people not renewing, to ask ourselves, is it because life happens and they're moving on, or is it that they would have renewed had they felt something, more supportive? I will say I'm pleased to report, for example, our 4 new missioners in Bolivia. Speaking with Joe recently, he said they have decided they're going to meet once a month to be together. They're going to have a couple of different locations. They're new in the region, but we hear so many of our new candidates talk about community. They are coming for that experience, yes, of service, but also how are we connected? And I know that our current missioners, are a little bit not wanting to, being transparent, say, once you get here in the beginning, yes, but later you get so busy. And so I think that, that encouragement for us to look at, but we have to be mindful of the needs of our new members. But having these new members who say, and now we're going to be proactive about it. Because I have seen that, yes, there's a little bit of a struggle, because you get out there and everybody's wanting to be, with the community that they serve. And we need time sometimes to make those connections. So I would just say that that is a work in progress that NKLM needs to do more of. Obviously, in our formation and orientation program right now, we're going to be talking about that, expectations, and they had always done that. I'm sure you all could vouch for that. But now talking about how do we now address those expectations and hopes. So very good question. Thank you. I am going to move us along, so unless you have a burning question for our board of directors, I think we did get joined by Debbie Cunningham. So just to let you know that she is on another one of our board members. But, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to leave that one. No, it's okay. I thought, and my report is actually very complimentary, obviously, hopefully, to what Mike has just given you from the perspective of the board. But I thought it might be important.
Did you want to let Debbie introduce herself?
Debbie, are you still here?
She's not on the Zoom.
Oh, no, she's not on anymore. I'm sorry. I thought I saw her come on and. Oh, no, she's not on anymore. I'm sorry. I thought I saw her come on and I wanted to go over 3 areas and sort of I call it, behind the Wizard of Oz curtain where everything is happening, but the actual work of it, if you will, the operational side. And I did come in 2022 as the director of mission, some of you may recall. So a big change in the organization is that after the first year, because of finances, the sustainability question, really said, all right, let's take this as an opportunity to at least try to address that point directly. So an interim executive director role took place, and then at the end of that first year, the board asked me to take this on as full-time. So technically, I've only been the executive director for 2 years. But when I came in, I will tell you, I thought this is going to be so much fun. I was very excited about the 2022 assembly, which to me was a very clear direction about nonviolence and all the things that Mike outlined. So it was, my job description to me came from the mission assembly. And it really was, as I switched into this other role, that it began to be clear that there were administrative things that had to do with the organization's health and well-being that I now needed to spend more of my energy on. And one of those is the staffing. And staffing, by the way, had to do with the restructuring, not just in leadership with the director of mission, but I already had started to look at the mission services department and how to readjust that. And the decision to locate the mission services program in El Paso was also started right away, which again, to me, was a clear direction for me as director of mission to actually live in El Paso and begin that exploration of how could we do it differently, so that our new candidates are engaged immediately with some volunteer opportunity. The evaluations over the years kept saying it's really intense, it's always a full schedule, but we recognize that the opportunity to let them have and at the time, the migrant shelters were an easy placement for that. It really was only in the first year that we were able to utilize that opportunity, but very successful with our 3 candidates that year. The next year was Josh, and because of that transition of having just the one, we ended up experimenting with another aspect of our orientation, and that is collaborating with the Franciscan missioners. Half of his time was spent with them in DC, and the other half right there in El Paso, so that we could also have some face time with him. So with that, the restructuring of the Mission Services Department and the other big department, our advancement. Knowing that our challenge is how do we proceed forward. We did not have a manager of that department. So with the full support of the board, it was, let's really change that. We had 2
a new hire there and a transition with the current staff that had been there for a bit. So I will say that in that interim year, we hired 3 managers, 2 others in the different departments. So it felt like the transition of staffing had to do with let's be sure that we know, for me, I don't think the board was at all concerned because they didn't know how hard it would go. It really was a very great meeting in November when Jennifer, Daniel, and Karen were, ready to, and they had hit the ground running in terms of the different departments. So that's been an important restructuring based on our financial needs and also trying to set these new directions. So related, this organizational restructuring was not just the director of mission, and Mike alluded to the regional structure. Having area directors in that second year, I could not do all the responsibilities of the director of mission, which was and is a full-time position. So between Steve Versailles, who is our area director in Africa, Asia, and Juan Gomez, we were already working on how do they take on more of the responsibilities so I could take on more of the role for the advancement and the, the fundraising piece. It's been a beautiful experience for me. They stepped right up. They are definitely, they care for MKLM, and as missioners have that perspective of let's keep subsidiarity and the engagement of the missioners involved. So I know that as I was very much in the listening mode. I came back to Maryknoll with a love for Maryknoll, but I also knew that the lay missioners had some different history and story for me to learn. And the shared leadership in the history of Maryknoll was why I was able to recognize that Sam Stanton was here, and I'm like, oh, I spent a couple of hours with him and said, can you come back as a consultant? Because I could tell the richness of his experience. But in hearing the stories of the shared leadership is why I thought we need to still figure out how to keep the missioners engaged on the how-to of everything. So with that, the area directors have been very instrumental in the selection of our new candidates. They're involved in the mission assignment process, which in the past would have happened by the director of mission and the MSD team. They are now part of that. So we do get together once we know who our candidates are. We talk about priority areas. Where do we need people, want people? Where are the needs? And of course, our nonviolent focus comes into that discussion. And then we look at the qualities and qualifications of our candidates to make the assignments. So I feel like none of that has been me, having to navigate that. It's been with missioners, and that's very reassuring. The El Paso discussion, I will say that when Ted Miles resigned, and the intent was that by the end of my first year, I would have a report for the board about establishing a mission center and then the connections for our mission services, so that we would look at the possibility of, is that a more sustainable location for us long term? And I was starting to develop a 3-year plan for looking at that, and so I don't think I'm telling tales out of school, as they say, but at one of the board meetings, they're like, so whose idea was this? And I was like, uh-oh, that was my idea. I was asked to move to El Paso. But I then recognized that I guess there is really a lot more homework to be done, even before we start talking about a plan. The staff, everyone is, I think, on the path to say we understand where it came from. It is a missioner initiated idea, but there are, of course, all the implications of moving all of the lay missioners to El Paso or Texas or anywhere else else for that matter. And I wanted to mention that because I know that it had got out there that we were moving everybody and everything. I don't think that that would ever happen from one year to the next. First of all, it would be something that needs a lot more visioning and consideration. And of course, our roots are so deep here with our relationships with the society and the sisters and how important that is to who we are. So I think that right now we are looking to leave our mission services department there for the time being and then continue with this dual locations. But it is helping with our recruitment efforts to be able to offer people interested, come and see, and we have a place for them to actually get engaged for a couple of weeks, for example. Now my next section is about the mission focus. As Mike laid it out in more general terms, for me, the specifics of it is that the special assignments, for example, which are included in the 2022 assembly, began to be acted upon by the missioners. In other words, that concept is that we know we are a smaller number. We cannot respond to regions, short-term or long-term, for a long period of time because that commitment to have another missioner take over, it's not possible. But we said, they said, we know that we can respond to specific requests for our history, our skill, our ability to fill a need, particularly when it is in the nonviolent, focused concentration. And so some examples of how that, again, with the area directors, and we have also put together a group we call the Mission Advisory Council. They are the 2 area directors and elected members from each of the regions, 2 from the Americas and 2 from Asia, Africa. So it's a small group of missioners, but I've been meeting with them monthly since that first year. We could talk about the fact that in Uganda, Marge Humphrey and Joanne Blaney received an invitation to go and do some training on trauma healing, the healing circles. Joanne Blaney started connecting with them virtually for about a year before, as you may all have heard, they just went for 4 months and had a very specific need that they were able to fill. And it certainly is a concrete example for us of a place where the violence that has left trauma in those people's history and story, we can be there and offer something to help them address that. Another place where that is happening is Beirut. That is we call them special assignments because we see them as her direct response to the invitation by the Jesuits who are in Lebanon at a time when the refugees who are there, that's what the Jesuits are addressing. Dee worked with JRS in Nairobi, and so now she was able to say, all right, it's a little different kind of presence than what she was doing in Nairobi, but again, very focused in being in an area that the violence is so palpable, and yet we have a missioner who says, I want to respond, I'd like to go. Another one, a special assignment, is the Dominican Republic. While Sammy was already in a place that needed our presence and our ministry there, but it really did get very dangerous, and she has been saying it, and I have to agree, she had to leave kicking and screaming because she wanted to stay there, but we said, please, it just, in February of not this year, but the other, she left, but in the meantime, another opportunity came up for working with Haitian refugees in the Dominican Republic with another returned lay missioner who is looking to establish a volunteer program to help them. So you see how there are those connections and those specific asks that Sammy is to help train their volunteers to come and serve the Haitians in the Dominican Republic. until, of course, we needed her to serve the lay missioners in a more full-time capacity. And now she has taken the place of Juan Gomez. It's an elected position for 3 years, or appointment for 3 years. And so she will be moving to El Salvador while she's in that capacity. But I did want to mention these special assignments because they're different in short term, in that the short term we're talking about contracts. And as Mike said, that has not been fully fleshed out and resolved as to, do we begin to accept lay missioners or volunteers for 6 months, for 1 year, for 2 years? I still keep, mentioning how we can learn from each other. I know the society has such a volunteer program, and maybe for lay missioners, we want to draw people in, and that opportunity would help. But it does change the way you do mission, right? We know it has to do with understanding and enculturation and language learning and all of that. So I think that's why we are proceeding slowly with that, but knowing that it is also the response to the times of what volunteers right now are looking for to even come in the door. Another place that we are looking at for future possibilities, we've done some research at the Myanmar-Thailand border. The migrant situation there has really touched the hearts of the Cambodian Maryknoll Lay Missioners who first brought it to our attention. I'm so glad that John Barth is here. He's been wonderful to help us make the connections and look into that. I thought we were going to be able to send one of our new candidates there, but in the end, that particular candidate, for example, decided, not to come. But we still have that information that Dee went and found out more about. And it's another place where the needs of the community, the people there, would be so important if we could accompany. But of course, if we have our limitations. Mexicali was another response. Rick Dixon was invited there by the pastor. He was able to serve for 3 years. We were hoping to make that a more permanent part of the border region, who are located in El Paso. But things happened that we saw, that's not going to be sustainable. It was unsafe for our missioner, and so better than to continue, something that we couldn't continue for long. Right now, Rick Dixon is relocated to El Salvador.
Back home where he belongs.
Sorry?
Back home where he belongs.
Yes,
library.
He's a wonderful missioner for sure. And so then the final thing I'd like to mention in terms of the mission focus that has been happening in these years, even as we restructure and try to kind of get our bearings for our nonviolence focus, and that is a collaborative effort with the Maryknoll Sisters. From year one when I arrived, Ted Miles and I were speaking with leadership and mentioning this mission center in El Paso and what we might be able to do there. The sisters spoke about their mission institute. So it was very beginning, but over the next year, we looked at the possibility of a collaborative effort that would move what has been done and the wonderful success of the Mission Institute here. How do we replicate that, but make it particular to El Paso? We wanted it to be experiential. We thought that way it wouldn't be so much retreat, seminar centered, but in a different way. And then an administration happened that has complicated that a little bit. However, the Maryknoll Monarch Initiative is underway. Since January of this year, the sisters have assigned Sister Esperanza Principio, my friend, there on a permanent basis. And the hope plan I had was that we would assign this to a lay missioner, pretty much in the way we have the Encuentro project, where Coralie Salvador is doing that. But you know that sometimes finding that right person at the right time has not yet happened. So we have kept the collaboration and the commitment under the MS Mission Services Department. So Daniel is overseeing that work, but we do have a part-time person hired, and her name is Maria Torres. With some of the impact of funding cuts and whatnot, she was working for JRS at the border, and now she will be doing this. We did have someone else who did an excellent job of getting us started, but he's going to start a Catholic worker in New Hampshire. And so, you know, just really good people available there. That the focus and the purpose of this Maryknoll Monarch Initiative is to bring attention to things that are mutually valued by the Maryknoll sisters and us: nonviolence, migration, and the environment. So that with that, we are really going to do the hybrid opportunities, experiences. You have in your packets a QR code. Please look on it and see, because there will be things you can attend virtually on those 3 events, speakers. We do want to use the local expertise when we can, or bring in people who help us to understand and grow, more in that. So,
it's worth mentioning, September 29th, Ruben Garcia from Annunciation House will be speaking about the theology of migration. If you know Ruben, he has a very vast knowledge and experience that he's sharing. And thankfully, Father Ron Wohlheiser will be with us on November 6th for a hybrid experience in person and online to share about the spirituality of global mission and using the border kind of like that.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, those are great examples of the people that we want to come and, speak to those issues and concerns.
Yeah, it's already started, right? Because I've been invited to some of the presentations.
Yes.
And they sent you out a notice
Yes.
a week ahead, the day of, and they tell you it's on.
Yes.
So I think that's great.
That's great. We started it on March 18th, was our first launching, and then over the summer, as I say, they will be rotating some of the focus on nonviolence or the migrants. On September, it'll be Ruben Garcia. And then Sister Esperanza has gotten some excellent speakers that help us, pay attention to the indigenous and of course the environment there right now at the border, and beyond. So it has gotten started. So I really wanted to spend the rest, and the main focus right now is to give you a little more insight into what the process has been for the lay missioners on our nonviolence focus. And for that, I am going to ask Dan Moriarty to join me. And yes, if you could put up the PowerPoint, please. Recognizing that there's been a lot of encouragement for it, and questions. I think you heard from Mike, there's a little bit of concern of how do you call that our focus or our vision and mission when people don't really know how that gets implemented. And I just want to compliment the lay missioners very much on the fact that they knew from 2022 when they put the focus that there was going to be a process that they needed to reflect, pray, and expand their knowledge of what that would mean. So this PowerPoint is going to walk us a little bit through what has been done to get us on that journey. And I probably should end with this, but for me, the nonviolent focus is as measurable as saying, ultimately, are we not all about bringing about the reign of God? You can't measure it. You can't know that you're ever going to get there, but you do know what that means. And we must, in some way, communicate that to people, because we are seeing how it is one of the entryways into a world that is upside down from what we see around us. So with that, I think we'll go into our nonviolence process.
I may get down your way.
Two things on.
I have some good friends.
Excuse me. Two things on that. One, I think it's true. It's an.
Maybe this is changing it. Sorry, I talked too much. Kill the battery. Brad, big shoes to fill. You see, he's always prepared.
I know, it's just, yeah, exactly.
Okay, we're back. So I think two things just to add to what Alita was just saying in introducing this and to give context to what we're going to talk about. One is, I don't think any of us knew what it means in practice to share the gospel when we went off to mission either, but we knew that it was what we wanted to do, and we would figure it out on the path and in relationship with others. And that's the same process, I think, that we're in with the lay missioners, living out this commitment to nonviolence, which we've been told and learned and recognized increasingly. And I forget the exact quote, but Pope Francis said it very clearly in his 2017 World Day of Peace message that you cannot share the gospel without it including this commitment to nonviolence. And so the other thing is the questions about how to do that are open questions, and that's okay. So just to say, one of the big ones that maybe comes out in this is we are defining nonviolence in a way that is ample, broad, involves a lot of different kinds of ministries and ways of understanding violence and understanding the response to it as nonviolence. But an open question is, how broadly is it helpful to define nonviolence? At what point does it become meaningless? Because it's so, if it includes everything, then what's the point of it? How is it helping us focus? So figuring out in the doing, kind of, how is this actually helpful? Where is it helpful? Where is it not helpful in terms of understanding, discerning ministries and looking at evaluating how they do or don't express this commitment to nonviolence?
And I'm not going to read all of the slides that you see, and in fact, Dan just summarized the next one here. Oops. Oh, I'm doing the wrong one. This is a quote from Pope Francis that reiterates what Dan was saying. And this is that broad understanding that we are, saying that it is, as we have heard from Marie Dennis, as we had heard as well throughout these days, that it is a personal and institutional ethic, a method of peaceful change, and so it's a way of life. That's my favorite. We've heard about how it came up at the Mission Assembly. And then a committee has been formed that really has been instrumental in helping the lay missioners to organize and plan. Dan, as part of the MOGC, has been joining us for the past year and a half now, I think, on that committee. So it's been really helpful. So with that, you see some of the steps that Mike also mentioned about training for the board, but we know we need to do better of the training for all of us. The pastoral theological reflections for the entire organization started happening immediately, that we passed out other people's reflections and directions and guidance on that, and then had our own discussions. These are the three legs that you have heard also described, so I'm not going to read them verbatim. But the question then came up during our social analysis to have every missioner try to locate themselves. Where do you see your ministry? Are you doing prevention, intervention, or the reconciliation and healing aspect for this? So in 2023, that next assembly, we had one every year for 3 years, 22, 23, and 24. This was reaffirmed. Another strongly led missioner focus on that this is, a commitment. So as individuals and as an association, we will update our country overviews to include the focus of nonviolence, complete a social analysis in each country, participate in ongoing reflections on SharePoint, update external communications, and continue to deepen our own spirituality and personal practices. We recognize all the work that staff and membership have already done and ask that the committee continue to guide us over the year. So they were kind of commissioned to keep this up. And I will say it did recognize that staff needed to be as well informed and updated as the missioners and, of course, our board members as well. So the beginning survey showed that 74% of missioners are working in prevention. They already identified it that way. 35% saw themselves in intervention, and 21% were working in reconciliation. And of course, some of the missioners saw that they overlapped. This was done at a time when there were 43 missioners, and I have to say, I think we might have had one or two that didn't complete it, but pretty much everybody did participate, and then they discussed it as a region after the individual analysis. So the regional responses were to these questions. I don't know, I should let you helped us to form some of these questions, Dan.
Yeah, there were several steps to this process, which we'll go into, but the basic questions were this. First, where do we identify risk of violence or ongoing violence? And again, part of this was defining violence. I think nonviolence, some people say, why nonviolence? It's defined negatively and they have problems with the word, but it actually invites a certain tension where we're living out something positive and life-giving and beautiful that builds peace, but we're doing it in recognition of the violence in the world. So you can't understand nonviolence without defining violence, which is complicated. So some of this is direct violence, some of it is structural violence, and some of it, where it says risk of violence, is recognizing situations, structural violence, cultural elements, etc., that lead to direct violence, that lead to domestic violence, political violence, etc. And so these are some of the examples of what people identified as forms of violence in the societies where they're working. Poverty everywhere. So recognize, and that's something I think Maryknoll is particularly familiar with, is the ways that poverty is a form of violence for people, and impoverishment, the processes by which people are impoverished.
Let's add here then, missioners were asked in the region to interview their partners or the people they worked with. Where do you see violence? So these conclusions were not just the missioners. We decided not to make it, we could have gone to all the data in the country. These are very focused on, in Joa Pessoa, in Cochabamba, and wherever the missioners were. So this might be why Marie and Dan have been so complimentary, that we were trying to make it manageable to what we could talk to. We couldn't address the whole country maybe, but at least the data that you are seeing is based on the missioners' actual location and where they were identifying the structural violence with the partners there.
And I think a piece of that too is that there was some trepidation, I think, when this started, that people's very valid and meaningful ministries might not be expressions of nonviolence, especially if people were thinking of nonviolence as civil disobedience, political activism, and the things we often associate with nonviolence. So this process was looking often at, it was involving local partners, and they were partners in the ministries we were already doing. So this was, rather than saying, oh, we're probably not doing nonviolence, let's go talk to a politician and see what it means in this country. It was talking with local partners with whom we were already working to understand the ministries in which lay missioners were involved in terms of the violence that the people in those communities were facing. So that's where these corruption, racism.
Yeah, poverty, everybody said poverty is a form of violence for the people that were there.
But one I think would be surprising to a lot of people beyond poverty is corruption, 89%. And we've seen that when we talk about structural violence, the way that corruption causes violence and is itself a form of structural violence. Racism, and along with that, people define that differently in different contexts. So we group them together, but people named tribalism, they named colonialism, and we put that together with racism. So all together, tribalism, colonialism, racism is 77%. Gender violence is huge, and a lot of the programs are addressing that.
That would tell you that 67% of our missioners are working with domestic violence in some capacity, for example.
And again, some of that's preventative, some of that's working directly intervention. Urban violence, and then what was the last one?
Sorry.
I think people read it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. So another way to look at the data was to say, so who are the ones that are being most affected by the direct violence? And not surprising, but still worth looking at, women, elderly, adolescents, and children, or a category that might overlap with that, but it's homeless people, migrants and indigenous, and then the imprisoned population as well. Persons with disability. Maryknoll Lay Missioners do have, in every continent, we've got people working with those with disabilities. And then the urban and rural groups that are affected by the climate and ecological destruction. So missioners with their partners identified then what were the impacts of that violence, as Dan was saying. So we could say, all right, this is the violence that we're trying to address in some capacity. So I think that it is repeating a little bit of the data previously, the racism, gender violence, inability to work due to lack of neglect, that there's the poverty. Structural violence leads to interpersonal violence, loss of hope, etc. So I'm going to just... So the regions then, they have not done this listening social analysis process with local partners. They had a very good, strong history of doing social analysis, but it was always bringing in the local experts to talk about that. So I think we did get the feedback that this was helpful, that it was a good process. Some surprising results from the meeting with those was the identification of new community needs, new ways to partner with other groups, and in some cases, a new ministry for missioners. They were identifying what they would like to see. And then the request by Maryknoll partners to do this type of social analysis together. How can we partner better with other MKLM missioners doing similar work? And I think that had to do, again, we have the DDP in Cambodia, Joe's ministry in Bolivia, very much with the deaf and other disabled persons in Bolivia, Tanzania, definitely we have that. So we were thinking, oh yeah, we should be bringing that information together better. Then how to contribute to change in violent structures affecting the local people.
Yeah, the next thing was to name action steps. So articulating how are lay missioners engaging in nonviolence in each of their ministries, and then naming action steps to further that. And also, this is always in conjunction with the nonviolence lens, which is still also one of the things that Maryknoll Lay Missioners have chosen to focus on and maintain. So there's an interplay between those, because as we saw, racism is one of the forms of violence that we saw in most of the places where people work. So some people did identify new ministries. Other people kind of tweaked the ministries they were in, looking at, okay, now I understand better the dynamics at play of where the violence is and how my ministry can better address that in any of these three areas of prevention, intervention, and healing.
And we have asked all the missioners to update their profiles based on these insights, so that now they are articulating what is the violence that their ministry addresses, whether it's with the disabled community or the elderly community. How are we doing that? Because some of this may be that's what the world needs to, is identify how we are being proactive to live out a certain way of viewing and that using that lens, if you will. So our goal for that committee really has been met at this point. We are at the point where the regions now need to take it from here. Individual missioners, as Dan said, have either updated and are continuing with their ministry. The regions have identified new ministries, always with the nonviolent focus for our new missioners, so that what we are offering, the incoming, is always related now, and we hope in some way, that we are relying on the regional local missioners to identify those as well. And we, of course, want the overarching goal of the organization to be communicated better, and that's where our collaboration and work with the board, of course, needs to get going, and our advancement and communications department. So it kind of brings it, to the fore of everyone's priority list. So the new ministries resulting from the social analysis in the regions, and then the overarching conclusions, that one is, something that we will still be bringing back to that Mission Advisory Council, to the board, and we would see, I should say, I am foreseeing that at the next Mission Assembly, which is not due for another couple of years, we will pause and now look at this nonviolent focus and say, how far have we come? How are we doing with that? So now I think we'll open up to questions and comments.
Well, if I can just say two things. I think one thing is this was a lot of work that we demanded of all the lay missioners. They're busy. And you know what it's like when you get asked to do something extra by New York. It's always a pain in the ass. So, but I think people did find it worthwhile, and now that it's been done, hopefully it's less work to repeat it, because this needs to be cyclical, both because we have new missioners coming in, who this is a helpful process as they identify their own ministries, but also because a big part of this is reading the signs of the times, which are always changing. So this needs to be a cyclical, ongoing process. I was personally gratified by it because I had seen, when I went to Cochabamba, we had to discern our ministry in the regional handbook. They had named mission priorities for Maryknoll in that region based on the signs of the times. And that was back when everything was violently horizontal. That wasn't violently, but it was, everything was by consensus, you may recall, and which is often close to endless, and but we needed to present our proposed ministries and explain how they addressed each of the values and priorities that have been named in that region, and then the whole region needed to come to consensus, not a majority vote, consensus on you doing that ministry, and that it did address those values. That was not happening anymore, and I think in different regions there was more or less work being done to say, what is our mission corporately? How are we as a community? What is our mission here in this country? And so I hope that this will, in a way that maybe is a little less frustrating than sometimes that consensus process was, give direction to a process that allows us to have a sense that I have my ministry, but I also understand how it's a part of Maryknoll's mission in this place that responds to local needs. And the other thing is, one of the questions we had, when this was named as a value, one of the reasons for giving the lay missioners this kind of prominent central value that hadn't been named as such in the same way before, nonviolence, was that it would help clarify what we are about, and it would be distinctive, and it would result in increased donations, but also recruitment. And so we've heard a lot about their success in those areas, and the big class that's coming in, several of those people named specifically this commitment to nonviolence as what attracted them to the lay missioners. So I hope as they come in and this becomes more robust in practice and people understand it better through this process, that will continue to be a generative element of what the lay missioners are doing.
Thank you for remembering that, Dan. Yes, questions, comments? Let's start here and then Marie.
I just want to say thank you for all the work that everyone has put into this. I went through the website last year when I was doing the mission talk and was very impressed by the way the individual missioners put on their particular page what they were doing with nonviolence, and it impacted me a great deal. Number two, I remember when I was doing orientation, and we did have people come in and do a workshop on nonviolence. And if we really make this part of our lives, it changed the way we speak to one another. It changes the way we look at the adages we use. You know, I'm going to kill two birds with one stone doing this. Well, no, I'm going to feed birds with one crust. If they fight over it and kill each other, it's their problem. But you know, I'm not going to get my ducks in order. I'm setting the table now. So it's like, how do we change our attitudes and how we speak to one another? In today's day and age, with everybody saying F this and F that and F everything else, we've got to change our way of speaking into nonviolent speech.
Thank you, Eileen. That also gives me a chance to make sure I mention Joanne Blaney has been really a leader on this nonviolence committee, but on the rest of the members is Kylene, Kylene, yes, in Cambodia, and Lois Versailles is also on it. Larry Parr, in that first year and a half before he retired for a bit, very instrumental in helping all of this get going. So those are the missioners I want to highlight, but everybody. And now Sarah Buter has joined. She's one of our younger, newer members as well.
And Heidi Strunecka is planning to join also.
She will be joining the committee, but has that, right.
Just one thing that maybe didn't come out as much in the slideshow, but that was part of this process that gets to what you were saying, Eileen, is that people identified needs for further training through this process. And so one of the other results of this is helping the regions to identify ways that they can continue their own formation in this area to improve the way we live this out.
And we will be providing some of that training for our new members as well.
I just want to add a word of a bigger picture context and a huge thanks for this amazing work. But so for the last 10 years, the Catholic Nonviolence Initiative, Pax Christi International, has been working to move nonviolence to the center of Catholic teaching, on the belief that if the Catholic Church, with its universities around the world, schools, religious congregations, parishes, etc., actually took this seriously and learned, helped us all learn what this was, that it actually would make a difference in the world and would be reach that none of us would otherwise have. What the Maryknoll Lay Missioners have done, as was implied by Dan yesterday, and I suggested it as well, is a unique process in the Catholic Church. I don't think anybody else has taken this so seriously to try to understand what's violence, what is nonviolence, how are we using it, how could we do it better? And so what we've now started, which is the Catholic Institute for Nonviolence, which is mostly virtual, with a little space in Rome. Dan and Joanne are going to come in December to do a presentation for Vatican officials. You know, some may actually come. If they don't, we're going to bring Dan and Joanne to them. We will record. I mean, this is just a long process that we've been involved in for a long time. But I've said before, and I will say again, what an incredible gift this is to the global church. And it's a different sort of piece than what you're doing in every mission site, but I really believe it is a tremendous contribution to where the church is moving there, is looking for ways to understand, what does this mean? How do we do it? So just a huge thank you to Maryknoll Lay Missioners for that contribution that you have made and you will continue to make to what is, I think, a really good global process. So thank you.
I see Heidi has her hand up. So Heidi, I'm coming over. Yes? Go ahead.
Thanks. I just want to add to what Marie was just saying. It's funny because, like, when I hear Dan say, and I've heard other people say, that we made this decision because we thought it would be good for recruiting and marketing, and I've heard people say that, and we all make decisions with different reasons. That was never, ever, ever, ever my motivation. It really was about feeling, as Dan started to say, we cannot call ourselves activists for a better world, and we cannot call ourselves gospel-based, peace and justice, love-focused people if in this time, in this world, the most important thing we are doing is trying to stand for a world that is nonviolent. And a reminder that nonviolence isn't just an absence of violence. It's got to be like the center from which we make all of our decisions and live our lives. And so there was this beautiful movement in the spirit at the 2022 Assembly when we all discussed all sorts of different possible focus, and then we all felt so strongly this is where we have to be as a people, as a church, as a lay mission sending organization. It's where we absolutely have to be.
I also want to share what I heard Sarah Buter say, and she really helped me when, she's 27, 28, was in her first year. The nonviolence really spoke to her. She has training in it. And she was clarifying that it's not about being against something, even the violence, which is bad. She said for her, nonviolence is to live in such a way that you are trying to go towards a vision and a world that you know is possible and can make happen. And so it is. It's about living that spirituality and the concrete steps. But I'm going to go to you all now.
Thanks, Elvira and Dan, very much for this very creative approach, as Marie Dennis already indicated. I would just like to add something to it. It stirred in me a memory of something going on, has been going on for 5 years, from a Maryknoll Society member in Peru. Many of you might not know Kyung Soo's son, who has been working in the prisons and I think the creative approach to prison ministry is he is working with a large group of blind people who go into the prisons and do massage on the prisoners there. I think it's a great healing ministry that might flow out of some of what you've all indicated and learned from what you're doing in terms of nonviolence. So when I think lay missioners go to the Latin American Regional Assembly every year, pay attention or get in touch. And I think in Maryknoll Magazine, there was a few years ago an article on what Kyung Soo has been doing in a very creative way with blind people going into the prisons, doing massage, and the remarkable effect of that response.
I am so sorry, I just paid attention to the time. We probably need to just give you all a little break. I'm noticing some people are needing to leave. So we're gonna stop here because we have one final piece to bring this all together. So let's take a 10-minute break and then come on back. And that gives, so thank you.
Most of my
some of you, even during the time here, said, what's the Maryknoll affiliate? So I'm glad that there's a little space to do this and do it quickly so this plane can land for Elvira. But I would say for the who, and I mean the what, and the where, and the when, and many of that, the website, I think it's a really good website. It's not a cop-out to say this, I hope, but to look at MaryknollAffiliates.org, MaryknollAffiliates.org, and that'll fill in a lot of those spaces. But just very quickly, some of the facts, I guess you might say. So it's about 35 years old, and we have one of the founders here, Jim Madden, Maryknoll priest, who's since passed away from Peru, and Ellen McDonald started, are kind of considered the founder and foundresses of the affiliates about 35 years ago. We've gone through many different iterations, but maybe the terror is coming back, I'm not sure. So some of there are about 35, there are about 400 affiliates throughout the world. It's global, it's not just US based. There are about 35 chapters in the US, in all corners in north and south of the United States. There are chapters in Latin America, in Guatemala, in El Salvador, and in Peru. In Bolivia, even in Sandro said there's a chapter there that's maybe emerging, but I'm not sure if it's fully come to surface yet. And then in Tanzania and in Kenya, there are also chapters. The chapter in Kenya is a virtual chapter started by a former Maryknoll priest and a former Maryknoll sister, so you might know the Grudens. And it's actually an interfaith chapter. Whereas most affiliates are Catholics, you don't have to be a Catholic to join. And that was a very expansive word anyway, what it means to be Catholic probably these days. But that chapter even has Muslims in it. It's kind of a Christian, interfaith, Muslim, Christian chapter. And I've been on many of the meetings to get together, and it's just wonderful to see reading from the Quran and from the Bible, and how they've managed to put that together with nonviolence, I guess you might say, as so much has happened here. So there are chapters, and chapter meetings would take place in a house and in another building, and a lot of that has changed, but there are, for some reason, I'm finding this more difficult than I thought because of wow, this happens to me every so often that I lose a sense of where I am. What am I trying to say? Yeah, yes.
I think you said it so well initially. The website is excellent. I am so edified just to read about what affiliates are doing. And we are all welcome to join. There are many returned lay missioners who are on board. And it's very flexible. There's no two alike.
Thanks for helping. Thank you for saying that, helping out a wounded man here. But I think the reason affiliates came on, joined, and I should say affiliates are former priests, former sisters, former lay missioners, and people who have never been part of Maryknoll but decided this caroms, probably the same reason that everyone came to Maryknoll, at least looking at that expansively, because this charism, this vision made sense. This faith vision, a global look at the world and reaching out to the vulnerable and the marginalized, and it made so much sense to these people. And some have already done that and come back and say, I want to be in a chapter. I want to have a sense of community and talk about this and see where we can, how we can continue this. And part of the affiliate website speaks about that in our own still living our own lives, working as you're working, or retired as you're retired, but holding on to this vision and coming together in these chapters is a way to do that, to hold on to that vision and to give each other kind of support in that, whereas there isn't a whole bunch of it out there. I don't know how much Elvira in line. Yes.
Yeah, you've got about 5 more minutes, but please talk about your recent change in 501c3 status and all of that.
Yeah. Again, we've been together about 35 years and connected with Maryknoll through kind of being part. There's only one employee, and that's me. Or it was previously Fred, who I followed, and Fred's here for the last 13 years. It's for myself, and before that, the same with Fred. And everyone else is a volunteer. And we came, our salaries were paid by the Maryknoll Society, Maryknoll Congregation, and the Lay Missioners, 45%, and 10%. But I was an employee, and Fred was I'm not sure Fred was, of the society, and all the work that takes place, HR stuff, and that was done through that way. But it was determined that this was kind of maybe put the society especially in jeopardy, in legal jeopardy in some senses. I won't go into all the particulars, it was a long drawn-out discussion, so that in order to move away from that we would need to become our own 501c3 nonprofit, some of you know what that is, and have the ability to have our own bank account to make purchases and that kind of a thing. And so about last February, we did become a 501c3 through the Diocese of New York, and that meant the board would become a fiduciary board. Previously on the board, there was a Maryknoll representative from the society, from the Lay Missioners, and from the congregation. And the congregation and the society felt that they needed to pull out because it might, as a fiduciary board, it might put some conflict there. So we've done that. Maybe in the last few minutes to say, in this mumbling kind of a conversation, that if we're going to be vital, if we're going to hold on to this vision, and if people even going to be, if we're even going to exist, frankly, probably everybody in Maryknoll might be able to say this, to remain vital and engaged, we probably need to hold on to the essence of who we are, to the chapters, and especially to that charism, but to, cliche to say, think out of the box, but how do we get into the mix? How do we start maybe looking at the world a little bit differently for ourselves, again, while holding on to that essence? And one of the initiatives we took with the Lay Missioners was Bethany House, and some of you have even been there, and that was knowing that migration was such an important issue. There were kind of two parts to it. One was that we would work with migrants and accompany and be with them as they moved in. And so we went to El Paso. Bethany House was in El Paso, I should say. And so we rented a house. Actually, because at that time we weren't 501c3, so we had to rely on the Lay Missioners to rent it, but we provided the money for that rent, but they could sign the contract. And the thought was that affiliates would come, as well as Lay Missioners, and hopefully sisters and priests and brothers also down the line, and join us together in this working with migrants, but also having an intentional community of affiliates and Lay Missioners, and again, hopefully priests, brothers, and sisters, and what community can mean for ourselves. And then to be out in the mix and have people maybe see us doing something, concrete actions that would help us. And so that went on for a year, and then the Trump administration came in, migration essentially stopped at so many levels. The shelters that we were working in with Ruben Garcia stopped, and so we could no longer do that, and we had to actually shut that down. Yes? Me toca? Okay. Okay, I'll stop there. Yeah, Fred.
I just wanted to mention one thing. There was there had been a chapter in, as Bob was saying, the Maryknoll affiliates would think out of the box. And there had been a youth chapter in Red Bank, but it was primarily because of a former Maryknoll sister, and so they no longer exist. But if you get a chance, when Cory Booker, I don't know if people remember, he spoke for something like 24 hours or whatever. During that, he mentions a letter from a young woman who's actually is a graduate of Red Bank, and she was part of the Maryknoll affiliate chapters, and right, she speaks as how the cutting of the aid to USAID affected the work she's doing, but how she had been influenced by Maryknoll and being part of the Maryknoll. So that's in Cory Booker's. You mentioned that, yeah.
I think we might have a few questions at the end, or is it now?
Yeah, at the end.
At the end, okay. So,
Not a lot.
thanks. Sorry for the moment. Thanks, everyone.
And now I'd like to welcome Sister Jenny Natividad to speak. There you are, Maryknoll Sisters.
Good morning, everyone, and congratulations on your Golden Jubilee. I have notes, so it's easier. So the Maryknoll Sisters at present, I want to give us statistics. There were 247 sisters in 18 countries. 2 sisters made their final vows in June. We have 3 sisters in the mission phase, 2 of which will also prepare for their final vows next year. So they will go on reflection phase. We have 3 women, 2 Kenyans and 1 Tanzanian, who will begin their live-in in Hong Kong next month. And there are a few more women who are in the process for consideration. So there's hope. So one of the highlights is we are moving our formation program to the Philippines. The changes in immigration policies in the US became a driving force to change our location. As you for sure know, Chad retaliated similarly to these changes in immigration policies, so we opened a new mission in Chad, but that's also uncertain with our sisters there. I would like to share a little bit because our vision statement says, this is a mouthful, the Maryknoll Sisters envision one earth community where the co-creative energy of divine love flows freely, nurturing wholeness of being in an expanding and evolving universe. I want to highlight the One Earth community there because that phrase came from the preamble of the Earth Charter that was completed in 2000 after 10 years of collaboration among world leaders. And I want to pick up something from the preamble. To move forward, we must recognize that in the midst of a magnificent diversity of cultures and all of life forms, we are one human family and one earth community with a common destiny. We must join together to bring forth a sustainable global society founded on respect for nature, universal human rights, economic justice, and a culture of peace. So, in line with that, I want to highlight that Maryknoll Sisters own a property in California, in Monrovia, almost 7 acres of land. And we would like to enhance this piece of property that is under our care and create a collaborative ministry that deepens our relationship with Earth, addresses the social injustices stemming from land and resource abuse, inspire transformative action, and strengthens our perception of the holy and the sacred. So we envision a center of collaboration there, bringing in coalition that are aligned with our mission priority foci. We name it our General Assembly in 2021. These are climate change, which we call healing the earth, migration, welcoming the stranger, and all forms of discrimination, which is healing human relationships. So we are committed to living up these goals, and we hope to develop a center, as I said, that will be local in presence and action while contributing to our mission in the world. So this project, we name it as Earth Commons. Earth is an acronym. E is for Earth, A is for Arts, R is for regenerative, T is transformative, H is healing, and commons for all. So this acronym was created by the Visioning Group way back in 2023. 13 Maryknoll sisters met in Monrovia. So we listened to the land and envision what we want that place to be. So we are in the concept stage at the moment. We are in conversations with architects with the help of a DBI project on that process. And we also have formed a collaborative team. Two Maryknoll sisters are in the team, Sister Haruko Doi and Sister Rosemary Kicini. We have one Maryknoll bioregional appreciations and land management policies. We want to reach out to larger community through ministry designed to foster health and well-being, heal broken relationships, and provide outreach and direct services to migrants in the local area. You know, we're near, not so far at the border, US-Mexico border there. So there are 11 Maryknoll sisters in residence there at the moment, but we hope that as we move forward with this vision of the land, others, not just Maryknoll sisters, will be part of the moving forward of that vision. How many more minutes I have? Yeah. So with regards to Maryknoll Center also, some of you may know that our Cloister Hill, the hill now, we are partnering with Open Arms. It's a place used now for refugees, though we don't. But IFCA, a local group who does low-income housing, will partner with Open Arms so that they can take over the management of the place. We also plan to renovate our main building in the future. So we're in conversation. And the whole congregation also are doing synodal process. So we've been having small group sharing of all sisters across age and across time differences, where we are looking at our charism, identity, and spirituality. And one of the highlights that I want to point out, that one of our consultant that help us navigate and look from an outsider view of who we are, said that we are flowing missioners. And we are in the process of becoming always. Okay, I'm almost done. So one of the highlights in our community too is we just hired a new position. We call it CSMA. I'm losing. Chief of Staff and Mission Animator. This is Sister Ida Ford's nephew, Bill Ford. So he's just 2 weeks old with us, but he will be responsible in supervising and coordinating department managers, but also will promote, sustain, and animate the Maryknoll sisters' vision and mission identity among staff and administration, and develop mission projects for staff and sisters in the local area. Because we want our staff to be with us. We want them to be part, they're already part of mission, but we want to deepen that collaboration. So just a highlight before I end this, on September 15, there is an event that we want to happen at Maryknoll. In June, we know that 2 sisters went to Washington, D.C. to accompany migrants, I think, and that started a sharing of lunch and learn groups. So sisters gathered and listened to their sharing. And Bill Ford was our consultant at that time. And he also sent us an article of Bishop Sykes, Living Vein of Compassion. So that the group continued to meet, lunch and learn. And then as it evolved, we want to be part of the escalating situations of the mass deportations happening in our country, but to start locally. So on September 15, there will be an informal gathering that will shape by 3 simple objectives, and I want to read that to you. To establish common ground with the participants that we will be inviting, to reflect about our identity as nations of immigrants, to inform a shared common understanding. So participants will be asked, what does your organization see and hear about the condition and treatment of migrants today? And what are their organizations doing now? And the last objective of this is to foster a communal response. So I was so moved the past days listening to Marie and Bishop Stowe, because I myself, I'm not a US citizen, but it's heartbreaking to see what's happening. And it reminded me, as I reflect on what happened in the Philippines in 1986, when we overthrew the dictatorship. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered to overthrow the dictatorship of Marcos. And I was hoping, I wish this country will have something like that. Anyway, just want to highlight that this event on September 15, we would like to invite different groups, interfaith, and also the mayor, the senator, police officers, and also the Maryknoll family, of course, just a representative from each group. So we're hoping something will come out of that. So I think that's all. I actually want to say something before I end this, because I started with this and I did not. Because as I look at this envisioning of the future, I thought there was a story that Sophia Park shared with us before. A young child full of curiosity asked his mom, "When is tomorrow?" Mom answered, "When you go to sleep and wake up, that is tomorrow." So the child went to sleep and wakes up, ready to begin another day, and asks the same question, "When is tomorrow?" The answer is a beautiful paradox. Tomorrow is today. So I felt the realization that tomorrow continuously transforms into the day highlights that our actions and preparations in the present moment are crucial for shaping our future.
And I am looking for our society representative. So I just sent a quick text. Maybe they're on their way, so I may have to, bring one of them on a little bit later. So sorry about that. But as you can hear, just hearing from Bob and Sister Jenny, we could be here another whole day just to weave together those visions, that common way that we walk together. But we won't really have the time to do that. But it is happening on a day-to-day, and this word we call collaboration. And I hope you've heard how, as lay missioners, we are always trying to make sure that we are communicating and working together as best we can at the many levels that we need to do it, in the regions, of course, here, and then in the other projects that we have in common. So because we may not, I don't want to just hold us up, the way to land this plane, I thought it would be good to get the thoughts, someone to summarize. What did you hear? What did you think about these days that we have been together? So I had invited 3 individuals to be thinking or seeing it from that perspective since Thursday to today. And that's going to be Sister Ellen, Father Leo, and Bob. And so do I have a volunteer on who would like to start? Yeah, we have 35 minutes, so, you know, you can take your...
You take 30.
I thought we were going to say, come on up. Come on up, Ellen. If you each took about less than 10 minutes, that would do it, but if not, go for it.
Leo said I could have 30. My first thought is this has been mind-blowing for me, these whole 4 days. They have just been excellent in every way, and I just have to reiterate my gratitude for having been invited to do that opening talk, because if I hadn't had to do that, I probably would not have gotten so involved into this celebration. And I don't even know where to begin, but I'll try to be short. I talked about how I found it interesting that, you know, you ended a century with 25 years and you began a century now with 25 years. And I was thinking how those first 25 were formative, but what I've learned is that the second 25, you've become your own person. I remember one of the very first, I think it was a JML meeting in the early 2002, I think it was. And it was when there was great optimism because the society had given a substantial fund to the lay missioners. They had the option of buying Bethany, and everything was looking so bright. And at that time, there was 2 men and a woman elected as the leadership of the lay missioners. And what struck me was, for various reasons, it was the Hispanic woman who really carried those years. And she began by saying, we have to learn what it means to be laity. We have been under the aegis of the society and the congregation, priests and sisters all along. We have to find out what it means to be laity in the church. And so those terrible years of disappointment towards the end of the first decade, I realized, you know, there was no whining. I mean, you people lost so much money. You lost Bethany, and you cut back the budget $1 million. You had to cut down numbers of people you could receive. We never had to do that I'm aware of. But you did it in such a fantastic way, so that when I heard Mike's words at the beginning of the thing about how the group is doing with the board and all, which was new also, I just think that you've done a fabulous job. But also what struck me in these days is how the different talks kind of dovetailed. It all held together so very, very well. I think the presentations and the meaning. And something that I wasn't aware of was how you had zeroed in on a focus on nonviolence. And so what I've learned in these days too is what that has meant to have a common focus, what a unifying thing that is. I think somebody said, referred to it as a corporate, I think Dan said it, to have a corporate mission vision besides our own individual participation in mission. Something else that struck me is that I was really moved when I realized that you had had a home at Maryknoll for 34 years, and then you lost it. And we didn't do anything about that. We being the older siblings. And then I was asking Mike, how, what would it mean for the society or the congregation to have given something, and now that we're having empty buildings and things like that. And his reply was, oh, we're not even sure we want to come back here. And I remember a remark that my partner in talk, John Stillahan, when I said something about why don't we give a building to them, with all these leftover, and he said, oh, I think they're doing the smart thing. They're getting out of Westchester County. So I think that for me, it's opening up two things. One of it is, why am I trying to solve your problems? You people are your own people now. I mean, it's not up to us. And you have begun to invert that triangle that I referred to. There were laity before there were priests and sisters. And you really have made a big, I think, impression on the overall image of the church that really is inverting the triangle. So I could go on about a lot of little things, but I think I'd like to turn it over to someone else. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. You still get 29 minutes here. Well, this has been a reunion, and I feel a sense of union among all of us. And I've been renewed myself in the spirit of what Maryknoll Lay Missioners is all about. I've really been refreshed in these 4 days here with all of you. So the task was sort of reflect on what has been said, and this is what I wrote down. These are some words and expressions I heard. Hope, darkness and light, nonviolence, Pope Francis, solidarity, justice and peace and ecology, transformation, Holy Spirit. Hope. Hope is always in community. Marie Dennis said in her first sentence, your stories are filled with hope. We heard of the Jewish and Palestine students mobilizing in Gaza, equality, communion, and mutuality and love, our goals to live for. Rationality is a sign of hope. Our lives are connected with the cosmos is a sign of hope. Migrants bringing faith centers together is a sign of hope. We had Jason helping others in Cochabamba with their basic needs. Internationalization with the 3 El Salvadorians is a real sign of hope. And the 11 new mission is being formed this fall. And in the word of darkness, we shared it's a U.S. reality, is full of darkness. U.S. politics is demonic. Massive destructions with rearmament in Europe, turned out immigrants, the nuclear war threats, the wars of starvation, the tools of warfare. We saw a presentation of Missioners of Hope in desperate times, which Dan presented. We all feel the clouds of chaos and uncertainty today. Then the lighter narrative was the divine providence that guides us. We can't say, so what? But the Maryknoll magazine and Orbis and the Office of Global Concerns are really signs of light and hope. The oneness of all creation was emphasized. Later this year, Pax Christi will have a meeting in Rome to promote teachings of nonviolence that Dan and Joanne are going to attend, which is a real sign of tremendous hope. Nonviolence. Now this is new for me. I didn't experience this. I didn't know that your priority was nonviolence. This was a learning experience here, and an exciting one for myself. who have been involved with the lay missioners closely over the years in Venezuela. And nonviolence is really the avenue that you want to take. And you give examples of people who are doing that in Palestine. The indivisibility groups of the protest in the States here who want no king. I went to a recent meeting, gathering rally, and Steve Judd gave me an expression I put in a cardboard. It says, no to 2025, but yes to Matthew 25. So Steve Judd created that lovely expression. I had my picture taken too. And then we had a yoga class with Kathy and Fabio. We conscientiousized about non-violence experiences with Dan holding us off from moving forward. And so, in during the analysis of nonviolence where we live, as a game changer, and asking each community of the Maryknoll Lay Missionaries to evaluate that, we heard about the process that's going to go on to identify nonviolence in their areas and to communicate that further on. And you talked about hope and the recruitment. Now, Pope Francis was mentioned often, and the bishop talked about Pope Francis in a beautiful way. And stressed the importance of a systematic change in our church promoted by Francis. And that topic of synodality is certainly the theology of Pope Francis and hopefully for the future of the church. Solidarity gives hope to all baptized, I heard. Solidarity is setting a new course for us. And Ellen McDonald asked, how can we move synodality with the Maryknoll family? And I think that's a challenge that has to be answered. The word transformation came on over and over again. Transforming our hearts and our souls is a priority of the Maryknoll Office of Global Concerns. They mentioned that the Maryknoll missioners that go overseas are never the same when they come back. And in the anniversary celebration of the Assumption, we heard that Mary was rushing with haste to Elizabeth. It's a new role of the Maryknoll Lay Missionaries. We see the Maryknoll missionaries come to aid others in haste. Also, we experienced our own transformation, I think, during these 4 days. I certainly have. Somehow my thing is locked here. Oops. And the Holy Spirit, it's where the Holy Spirit is blowing down the walls of division and hate. And we've heard of the evolution of the Maryknoll Lay Mission movement, as Ellen referred to, in the first 20 years was the development of the lay mission concept here in Maryknoll. And the last 30 years has been solidifying the formation, the structure of the lay mission program, which has developed, I think, very well. And in closing, Bishop John mentioned in his homily yesterday, God gives Noah hope, and God gives hope to the Maryknoll Lay Missionaries. And finally, may the cloud of witnesses cheer us on to the finish. Amen. Okay, well, you get 20 minutes.
Second attempt. I have notes this time. So it's kind of how to give a dollop of coherency to this incredible time together. It really has been an incredible moment, I guess, the 4 days. The presentations, the prayers, wow. Yeah, this is something new. But how to characterize that in a way that's meaningful. And I thought I would concentrate more on the spirit side of it, rather than try to analyze or summarize what we've already integrated and what we will integrate in our own way, I think, and bring back to our own places and spaces. And so to look at the spirit side, and I think, unless I'm making this up, that Elvira, when you said what did you see and what did you feel when you were here? And the first thing I felt was being home. You know, that somehow this is home. People we understood each other. We accepted each other. We embraced each other. In the sense we know each other. Even if we don't know each other, we quickly figured out we do know each other. It's kind of a radical connectivity, I think, and I don't think a romanticizing that's there among us. And that's something pretty important, something to move forward with. And the seeing part, what do you see? Well, I think we are people that do see in a different way. You know how, I think it's in Luke, when the Pharisee Simon invites Jesus over and to a meal, and while he's there, this woman comes in and is washing Jesus' feet with her tears and drying them with her hair. And Simon is pretty annoyed by this. And then Jesus says to him, "Do you see her?" And he couldn't see her at all. Because she was a pawn in his worldview. She wasn't the subject. She was simply he already made a judgment about this. I don't think Luke says she was a prostitute, but you get the intimation that that's how he was looking at her. But I think we are people who almost by nature do see others, the other, especially the vulnerable, marginalized, and poor other. It almost seems to be part of our nature to do that. And that seemed really important to me, because that doesn't happen all that often. So kind of also like Leo did, just to mention some words that came to me, words or sentences or moments. And sometimes to just say that word, or sometimes to give a sentence or two about it. Maybe the first word that kept reappearing, or person, is Sam. And we held Sam up, and we held Elvira up, and the family throughout. And I haven't heard today, I don't know if any of us have, how he's doing, but that was one of the most wonderful things, I think. This is not something that we, I don't think he came up here, but there's a poet, Jim Moore. I don't know anything about him, so I know one verse from a poem he wrote was, we are caught between fear and love. We are caught between fear and love. And we've all experienced both of those, I'm sure. And we spoke about the darkness that Leo mentioned again, or even John Simeon in his talk mentioned. It's demonic. It's not only dark, it's demonic, and we know that. And there's all kinds of fear. But how to move ourselves and how to move others to the love side? How do we do that? And I think that's been with us in some ways. It's happened in the moments throughout that part of it. Another word that came up was cosmic consciousness. I think we all in this room have global consciousness, which is kind of aberrant behavior in the United States and in other places for some reason. But how do we develop that global consciousness more? And I think in that context, Marie often, also put nonviolence, which we heard in so many ways, and that was so moving, disturbing, and important challenge to listen to. Family, and I think Leo also mentioned this, that I think I've been here more than 40 years in connection with Maryknoll in different ways, for studying as a lay missioner. And family and being unified has come up, but we also know some would prefer staying in the silos, the silos of each of those four expressions. But can we find some way, it seems to make so much sense, not just administratively, but spirit-wise as well, to somehow get together and figure this thing out, especially with depleted resources and numbers and that. Wouldn't that make a lot of sense? I think the word mystics came up at least a few times, speaking of the spirit side of things. Dean Colorado said the next Christians will be mystics or nothing at all. And so a deeper relational sense of presence of creation, God's presence through all of us, in a contemplative piece of that. Someone also said, I think, a long, loving look at reality, how to speak to contemplation, and to hold that within ourselves as well. Again, Leo mentioned, and we all heard the synodal part, but just understanding that word seemed like a very strange word. It probably still does for an awful lot of people. What does that mean? But it means an awful lot when we understand. And I think it's not, since I was early on a lay missioner and with the affiliates and with all of us, that part is something that's so easy to hold on to for us. But it's strange for a lot of people, or some would still want to reject it and say, no, we don't want to do things that way. You know? And then maybe the last thing that really struck me was something that Anne Perry mentioned just in before, I think, the propaganda on the what we had, what we're going to look at in the other room nearby was when she said, I think quoting, and Anne told me this, Dorothy Day, who also was quoting Dostoevsky, that said, "The world will be saved by beauty." Again, it's not to discount the incredible importance of strategy and planning and the importance that we need funds to move forward and all of that. But sometimes transformation and change happens because something beautiful has passed by us or is with us. It could be the ocean looking at the eyes of a child or a friend. I was struck even sometimes it can be the way, not the words themselves, but the way words, the tone and the quality of the words. And for some reason, when Dan was speaking and Elvira was speaking, I didn't even know sometimes what they were saying. But the words struck me as this is in itself is somewhat, this is authentic, this is somewhat transformative in that sense. And so I thought I'd end with another poet, a theologian, a mystic in some ways. Some of you might have heard of Padre O'Toole, an Irish, he's only about 50 years old, from Ireland, originally from Cork. I think he's living in the north now, has written a lot of books and is mostly a poet in a sense, but also an incredible theologian. And he, in a poem called The Facts of Life, some of you may have heard of this, the very last lines were this, and maybe it goes back to that fear and love kind of quotient, or where we fit in on that. And he ended it this way, he said, we need to accept change before we die, but we will die anyway. So we might as well live, we might as well love, we might as well love.
Thank you all three very much. I knew that was a big task for, having to pay attention. And so I think they have hopefully summarized what many of us were thinking. I do want to say that you will be receiving in the mail an evaluation of sorts, but this was not a workshop. This was not, a retreat even. It was a family reunion, a celebration. But obviously we do want to hear if you have comments you want to share for future gatherings that may be similar. So you'll be getting an email. I want to say right now, if you registered, which many of you, all of you here did, we have your email. We will be sending out the talks that were requested. They will be made available. If you don't want your name on that list, because it will be shared with others, please let us know. Otherwise, we will presume that you want to receive the materials and therefore, have that.
Will that include the slides from today?
Would you like those slides as well? Yes. Can I ask you to take one and pass these around? Yeah. I'll do this side over here. Thank you. This is just our closing prayer, but I was, yes. We could create a list that has the names, but obviously in the constant contact or email where the materials will be, you'll have it, but maybe Karen, can we put that on a list of some sort and Oh, she just stepped out. But yes, we can create a list so that you've got each other's contact from here, I think, right? Okay, good. And as I say, there will be an evaluation by the end of the week, if not early next week. So we don't have time to get more thoughts, but obviously we have been sharing those thoughts as the days went on, and I cannot tell you how meaningful this has been for me to meet many of you face to face and not just have a name. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I pray you will have safe travels on your way back, and we will continue to be in touch. That is the good news. This is not goodbye, it's hasta luego, nos veremos, tu chao nana. And I thought this would be a fitting reflection for our departure. I think you all have heard it. It is attributed to Father Bishop Oscar Romero, but I think it also sort of speaks to our time together. So I'm just going to ask that maybe I'll start it in the back row. Oh, yes?
It was attributed to him, but it was written by Bishop Untner.
Yes.
Before he was a bishop, and he spoke at one of our sending ceremonies, like 1999 or 98 or 99. And he died shortly thereafter.
Yeah, I didn't have all the details, but I knew he didn't actually write it, Oscar Romero, but thank you for that. So Charlie, if you would just do one line, and we're just going to say one line and go around, yeah? So that...
It helps now and then to step back and take a long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision.
We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the kingdom also
church's mission.
No set of goals and objectives includes everything.
This is what we are about.
We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water, my eyes, I have problems with my eyes.
That's right.
We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise.
We lay foundations that will need further development.
We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities.
We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that.
This enables us to do something and to do it very well.
It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest.
We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker.
All together?
We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future, not our own.
Blessings. Safe travels, everyone. Linda, I have yours. Oh.
Great seeing you again.
It certainly has been good to hear. Thank you.
Yes,
Keep on.
yes. Keep in touch.
I'd like to.
So we'll find a place. We'll find a place. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Same here. Same here.
Just a reminder, there is lunch. There is lunch on the first floor.
Thank you so much.